It was a bright, ordinary morning at the busy Atlanta International Airport. People moved with a mixture of excitement and stress. Some headed to long-awaited vacations, others rushing toward important business meetings. Among the sea of travelers, two moments were about to unfold just hours apart. One, a quiet act of kindness by a young black teenager that would ripple far beyond what anyone expected. The other, a shocking display of power and ignorance that would leave the nation stunned. Derek Hayes, 17, walked with his worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder and a deep sense of responsibility in his chest. He wasn't flying for fun. He had just buried his grandmother in Alabama, and now he was on his way back to Chicago to return to school and a part-time job that helped his mom pay bills. Life had been heavy lately, but Derek never let it show. His mother always told him, "Son, carry your pain with dignity, but never forget to look out for those around you." And Derek remembered. At the same time, just a few terminals away, another traveler was making her way through the airport. Ella Monroe, a young woman in her mid-20s, moved quietly, dressed in simple jeans and a hoodie. She had blended in with the crowd, and that was exactly how she wanted it. What no one knew, not the airline staff, not the TSA agents, not even the police officers stationed nearby, was that Ella was the daughter of the sitting governor of Georgia, and that anonymity, once her shield, was about to be shattered in the most humiliating way. Back at Gate 14, Derek noticed a woman standing awkwardly near the seating area. Her belly was large, clearly pregnant, and she kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other. The gate was full, and no one seemed to notice her discomfort. A few people even gave her the side eye, pretending not to see her. Derek didn't hesitate. He stood up and tapped the woman gently on the arm. "Ma'am, please take my seat," he said softly, giving her a reassuring smile. She looked at him, surprised, then grateful. "Thank you so much, young man. That's very kind of you." Derek simply nodded and moved to stand by the window. He didn't know her story. He didn't ask for anything in return. But what he also didn't know was that this small act of empathy would come back to him in a way that would change his life forever. Across the airport, at security check-in, Ella Monroe approached the conveyor belt to place her bag. She was calm, cooperative, and respectful. But something about her must have caught the attention of two officers on duty. Maybe it was the lack of expensive luggage, or maybe it was just a slow day and they were looking for entertainment. The two officers, both white and clearly trying to show off for a nearby group of airline employees, exchanged glances and smirked. "What if we pulled a little prank?" one of them whispered to the other. Moments later, as Ella walked through the metal detector without incident, the taller officer stepped forward dramatically. "Ma'am, we need to detain you for further questioning," he said in a voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Ella blinked. "Excuse me? What's wrong?" The other officer stepped in, feigning seriousness. "Just routine, don't worry, but you'll need to come with us." Confused, Ella followed, still clutching her boarding pass and ID. They led her to a corner, near the security station, and suddenly, with no warning, the officer pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "You're under arrest for smiling too suspiciously at TSA agents," he joked, chuckling loudly as he clicked the cuffs around her wrists. People nearby turned and stared. Some laughed awkwardly. Others looked shocked. A few pulled out their phones. Ella stood frozen, humiliated, her hands behind her back, eyes wide. "Guys, this isn't funny," she said, her voice shaking. But they didn't stop. They kept going with their little show, posing like they had caught a criminal, making lighthearted comments that fell somewhere between humor and harassment. Ella didn't scream. She didn't resist. She just stared straight ahead, letting the hot flush of embarrassment rise through her skin. In her mind, she debated whether to tell them who she was. Not because she wanted special treatment, but because this was wrong. Not just for her, but for anyone. Back at the gate, the pregnant woman sat comfortably now, occasionally looking over at Derek, who had gone back to scrolling through his phone. A flight attendant approached and whispered something to her. The woman's eyes grew wide. She scribbled something down on a piece of paper, folded it, and walked over to Derek. "Here," she said, pressing the paper into his hand. "Don't open it until you're in your seat." He looked puzzled but nodded. Meanwhile, back at the security station, things were beginning to unravel. One of the airline supervisors had recognized Ella, not because she looked familiar, but because she'd seen a news story the night before. A fundraiser, a picture of the governor and his daughter side by side, arms around each other. The resemblance was undeniable, and suddenly what had been a joke didn't feel so funny anymore. The supervisor rushed over, whispering frantically to one of the officers. The smile dropped from his face. So did the color. Ella, still in cuffs, looked him dead in the eye. "Is this how you treat everyone, or just women who look like they can't fight back?" The officer swallowed hard. "Ma'am, we didn't know." "You didn't ask." Within minutes, the cuffs were off. Apologies began to flow, but they were hollow and clumsy. Ella walked away without another word, but the damage had been done, and this time, it wasn't going to be swept under the rug. Derek finally boarded his plane and took his seat by the window. He unfolded the note the woman had given him. His eyebrows lifted as he read. The words were short but powerful, and they would lead to a chain of events no one, especially not Derek, could have ever imagined. But before that would happen, another storm was already brewing back at the airport. Security footage had captured everything. Witnesses were already tweeting. And by the time Ella called her father from the car, her voice still shaking, the state governor's office was already on fire with incoming calls. What happens when power is misused against the wrong person? And what happens when kindness finds its way into the right hands? The answers were coming. But no one was ready for what came next. Derek sat quietly in his seat, the folded note resting in his hand like it held more weight than a piece of paper should. The engines hummed, passengers settled in, but his mind was stuck on the pregnant woman's smile. It wasn't just gratitude, it felt like something more. He slowly opened the paper again and read it once more, making sure he hadn't imagined what she wrote. "I work for someone who can help you. Please don't ignore this. You changed my day more than you know. Reach out. Claire." Below the message, a number and email address were neatly printed. There was something about it, something that made Derek's heart beat just a little faster. But he didn't know what to think. Why would someone say that over a simple act of kindness? Meanwhile, the airport buzzed with activity, but there was a shift in the air. Something had changed. The video of Ella being cuffed had already been uploaded to social media by a traveler who caught everything on camera. It started spreading slowly at first under vague captions like, "This happened today at Atlanta Airport. SMH. Then someone recognized her. Comments started rolling in. "Isn't that Governor Monroe's daughter?" And wait, this can't be real. In the governor's office, the mood had turned from routine to alarm. Ella hadn't said much on the phone. Just one sentence, spoken clearly and calmly. "Dad, I need you to see what just happened to me." She sent the video, and the silence that followed on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Governor Allen Monroe was known for his level-headed approach to leadership. He avoided unnecessary drama, stayed out of social media feuds, and tried to keep his family out of the spotlight. But watching his daughter, his only child, being humiliated, handcuffed like a criminal, for nothing more than standing at a security checkpoint, flipped a switch inside him he hadn't felt in years. Still, he didn't respond with rage, not yet. He made a few quiet phone calls, to legal advisors, to the airport director, and finally to someone in federal law enforcement. Every word was measured. But behind every pause, every soft tone, was a storm quietly building. Back in the sky, Derek leaned his head against the window, staring at the clouds below. His phone buzzed in his pocket, an alert about a trending video. He opened it without thinking, and his breath caught in his throat. It was her, the woman from security, the same one who had been calmly walking through the checkpoint hours earlier. He didn't know her name, but there she was, handcuffed and surrounded by laughing officers. The same airport, the same day. He read the caption slowly. Governor's daughter humiliated by airport police. Officers suspended after joke goes too far. His stomach tightened. It was strange. These were two completely different moments. His quiet act of kindness and her public humiliation. But now they were somehow connected. They had both taken place within the same space, within hours of each other, yet carried such different energy. One full of grace, the other full of disgrace. But what Derek didn't know yet, what no one knew, was that the woman he gave his seat to, Claire, wasn't just anyone either. Claire Benson had worked as a legal advisor for civil rights cases for nearly a decade. She wasn't famous, but she had friends in powerful places, and a reputation for showing up when injustice surfaced. She was flying that day not just for work, but because she'd been consulting on a new initiative with the governor's office to improve public service behavior, especially in law enforcement. Her focus, bias training, accountability, human dignity. When Derek offered her his seat without hesitation, it wasn't just the gesture that moved her, it was the timing. She'd just been reviewing case files of kids his age being overlooked, judged unfairly, written off. And here he was, humble, quiet, no ego, just heart. It hit her in a way she didn't expect, and then she got the message on her phone. From a contact on the governor's team. One video clip, no explanation needed. She sat frozen in her seat, watching Ella being handcuffed like it was a game. Claire knew that look, the mix of humiliation and controlled fury. She had seen it too many times in her career. But this was different. This was the governor's daughter, and now the system would have no choice but to look at itself in the mirror. Claire made a decision. She reached for her phone and sent a single text to the governor's personal number. She didn't normally skip protocol, but this wasn't normal. I know what just happened. I was at the airport. I saw it unfold. Call me. Derek, unaware of any of this, just felt a strange stirring in his gut. Like something big was happening and he was somehow on the edge of it. He looked down at the note again. It still felt like a puzzle. I work for someone who can help you. But help? Him with what? He hadn't asked for anything. He didn't even share his story with her. Just gave up his seat. He thought of his mom, who worked double shifts and always said, "Don't expect the world to notice you, son. Just do what's right anyway." He thought of his grandma, now gone, who taught him how to move through the world with quiet strength. If they were here, they'd probably smile and say, "Well, sometimes when you give the world a little light, it finds its way back to you." But the light hadn't found everyone yet. At the airport, the two officers who handcuffed Ella had been escorted out of their posts. Their badges weren't taken yet, but their behavior was now under internal review. One of them tried to defend, "It is a harmless prank." The other claimed he didn't know who she was, but that was exactly the problem, because in their eyes, she was just another young woman moving through security. Someone they thought wouldn't matter. Someone they could embarrass and walk away from without consequence. But she wasn't invisible. And she wasn't powerless. And the cameras had caught everything. As news of the incident reached the evening headlines, the public started reacting. Some defended the officers, others demanded action. And more than a few people, strangers, began tagging Derek's name too. After a post from Claire quietly went viral. She hadn't used his full name, but her words echoed loudly. "Today, I met a young man who reminded me what kindness looks like. No spotlight, no audience, just heart. His name is Derek, and I think the world needs more of him." People started searching. Who was Derek? Why did she say that? Was this connected to the same airport? The threads were slowly weaving together, and yet none of the people at the center of it knew just how big this moment was becoming. Ella sat quietly in her apartment that night, watching the video loop again on her phone. Her father had promised accountability. She knew he meant it, but she also knew this wasn't just about her. Something deeper was broken. She opened her laptop and began typing. Derek, back home in Chicago, stared at the note again. He still hadn't messaged or called. He wasn't sure he would. But something told him maybe he should. And Claire, watching the news as headlines shifted and conversations exploded, whispered to herself, "This is bigger than we thought." But none of them knew that the next 24 hours would bring a turn no one expected. Because something was about to be revealed, something buried in the past, connected by choices, by silence, and by the single seat Derek had given up that morning. And it would change everything.